It is my displeasure to inform you that my name is Jarrod Shanahan, and this is the last fucking story you're ever gonna hear. This is Satan was so over it. Satan was so over it. After millennia of sowing chaos, illness, discord, and destruction, the tireless pursuit of evil for its own sake had begun to feel like a tired old routine. And this certainly wasn't due to a lack of success. To the contrary, the world had quite literally gone to the devil. Satan's indefatigable pursuit of genocide, famine, war, state repression, and environmental ruin made these things as ubiquitous as his earthly servants in whom people foolishly placed their faith. Satan didn't even have to speak to humans directly anymore. He had assistants for that, an increasing amount of whom operated independently. Charismatic politicians and billionaire philanthropists fell over themselves, claiming to be able to solve the world's problems, but only intended to make them worse, while enriching themselves and robbing people of their faith in humanity. From Auschwitz to Darfur, in the wake of the atom bomb and under lakes of napalm, in thirsty gulps of poisoned water and borrowed breaths of toxic air, Satan's vision for hell on earth had come to fruition. He had come so far since playing practical jokes on a couple of kids in the woods, and Satan should have been elated. But he just wasn't into it anymore. Satan had never been a slacker. Long renowned in fine art, literature, song, and religious mythology the world over, Satan rocketed into the 20th century with the momentum of thousands of years of consistent evil doing. And it was there that he did perhaps some of his finest work. Compared with the carnage of the Gatling gun and mustard gas, dressing up like a snake and tempting a naked woman with a magic apple is downright campy. And the nation state, which Satan originally invented simply as a mnemonic tool, enabling him to keep track of the world's quickly proliferating cultures, proved to be an unprecedented vehicle for advancing racism and mass slaughter, although Satan would later claim that he intended this all along. By the 1940s, things were so awful that Joseph Stalin briefly got to be the good guy. To keep things fresh, Satan then let America run the world for a while, leaving millions of bodies in its wake, and most deviously of all, cloaking the whole globe-trotting genocidal misadventure in the mantle of righteousness. This devilish dosage of irony, characteristic of Satan's later work, contained, of course, the watermark of its author's brilliance, but in retrospect, indicated, as irony often does, the growing boredom, ennui, and ultimately self-doubt that was festering under the facade of a consistently innovative and prolific evildoer. And this rumbling undercurrent would ultimately carry Satan away, leaving him thoroughly washed up. By the end of the 20th century, Satan was burnt out, and doubted whether he could progress any further in his work. After the past century's horrors, any future acts of evil doing just seemed redundant. Satan abandoned his Soviet Union storyline without a gratifying climax, and he even forgot to mention his plans to the CIA in their weekly meetings. By this point, he was so bored with the repetition of mechanical genocide that he sought to reinvent himself in a more stripped-down format, using only machetes. But like most conceptual efforts by aging talents, this was a hit with the critics, but largely ignored by the general public. He had gained many followers in certain subgenres of rock and roll music, but he doubted their sincerity, and he secretly feared that they were actually mocking him. Not that Satan even cared at this point. He'd begun drinking heavily, and he'd really let himself go. He had started to think that evil was just mean, and he even caught himself hoping that everything would turn out well for Elian Gonzalez. He was so drunk on New Year's Eve 1999 that he completely forgot to screw up the world's computers at midnight, and he was too embarrassed to carry out the plan belatedly when he woke up. And in a way, he was kind of glad. That would have been a real butthead thing to do, he later thought. At this point, Satan wasn't even coming into the office most days. Global capitalism, which he had created only intending to destroy the nuclear family and undermine the authority of the church, had taken on a life of its own. And it was spreading poverty, misery, disease, and mass slaughter at a pace that made Satan himself feel superfluous. And he had to be honest with himself, also made him a little uncomfortable. He only sent Hurricane Katrina to New Orleans at the request of his friend Pat Robertson. And he figured FEMA would probably rescue most of the people and it wouldn't be a big deal. What followed surprised Satan more than anyone, as he hadn't really been paying attention to American politics, except occasionally getting drunk and whispering crazy shit in George Bush's ear, pretending to be God. And he had no idea how bad things had actually become in the United States. Satan had always had a great time in New Orleans, and everybody there had been really nice to him. He caught himself wanting to help these people out. He wondered why more money hadn't been allocated to the levee system, or the federal government's response plan, both of which he would have designed better himself, and he was Satan, for fuck's sake. He donated money to a Katrina relief fund under a fake name, scared that anyone would find out it was really him, but also feeling deep down that it would be a big relief. His career in evil, he decided, was over. Satan purchased a brownstone in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, because a group of Hasidic Jews convinced him that the Messiah was coming back there, and Satan really missed that guy. He would have been safer in Prospect Heights, but he had begun taking classes on urban affairs at Brooklyn College, and he had decided that he didn't want to be involved in the rapid gentrification of that neighborhood. Satan tried to become a writer, but his work was so shitty that the only place he could read it was a fake artist co-op that exploited its workers. When the workers threatened to go on strike, Satan became a union buster, because it was easier than becoming a better writer. You know who you are. He started drinking in the morning, and he spent his days ruefully recapping his long career of evil doing, and wanly imagining how things could have been. He spent his nights in seedy bars, impressing women with his Latin, and showing off the WNYC, New York NPR, tote bag that he had received as a star donor. The men and women who he slept with seemed to do so out of pity. And whereas he had once fiendishly enjoyed not calling them back after the first time, he now did so, and could never get through. He was really beginning to feel his age. Once in a while he would dabble in evil, but it never felt the same as it used to. One night, at a bar called Franklin Park, he convinced a drinking buddy to purchase a toxic subprime loan, only to call him the next day regretfully and steer him towards a more responsible option. Satan was puffy and sad. His red pajamas didn't contain his booze-bloated gut anymore, and he didn't even care. He stopped showing up for his shifts at the Park Slope Food Co-op, giving them no notice. He felt guilty about this for weeks. I ran into Satan by chance at the soda bar on Vanderbilt Street. The bar was showing The Last Temptation of Christ, and Satan was loudly correcting the film's factual inaccuracies and speaking Latin didactically. Nobody was impressed. I got the impression that he was in here doing this most nights. Jesus didn't last a night in the desert, he slurred. Just another spoiled kid with a big shot dad and a stupid beard, pretending to rough it. Nobody paid him any attention, and he became enraged. Just like all these assholes in Brooklyn. He gestured frenetically around the bar, knocking over a fancy spiced beer next to him. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, he murmured over and over to the beer's owner, a Walter Benjamin look-alike with an over-cultivated appearance of creativity and originality, which in no way reflected his actual personality. This young man condescendingly brushed off Satan's importuning offers to buy him another round. A free beer wasn't worth the threat of further conversation, it seemed. The sight inspired pity, and I sidled up next to Satan unassumingly. I'll take a beer, I said warmly. Just don't try to sell me on that apple cider. Okay, okay, he bemoaned with a false modesty. You recognize me. I can't go anywhere in this town. Oh, sorry, I replied coyly. I'll leave you alone if that's what you... No, no, he interrupted. I didn't say that. An awkward silence reigned as Satan's thoughts turned inward. These kids today, he erupted, they just don't appreciate evil anymore. You ever heard of this band, Slaughter or Slayer, I asked? Yeah, Slayer. I ought to sue their asses. You think I see a dime of that shit? I can't even get Tom on the phone. No respect, I said perfunctorily. This was not the Satan that I had grown up shitting my pants over. Something was wrong. Is everything okay, Satan? My concern was sincere, and he sensed this. I don't know, he shrugged, slamming down his beer and spilling some on Walter Benjamin, who didn't look away from his space phone for a second. It's just, I just look around and I don't see any place for the devil in this world anymore. Worse yet, I'm starting to think that I kind of deserve this, you know. After all, I have been kind of an asshole. I just get the feeling nobody wants me around anymore. Maybe they're right. Ah, Satan, I implored. You don't mean that. I don't know, kid. I just don't know anymore. His hurt was palpable. What's your name, kid? Jarrod Shanahan, I replied, shaking his hand. Nice to meet you, Jarrod. He perked up a little bit at the chance to talk about himself. Well, I've had a lot of names over the years, you know. He smirked, feigning modesty once more. There you go, you little egomaniac, I teased him, tickling his stomach and messing up his hair. He giggled and grunted like a little piglet. Who's a little egomaniac? Who's a little devil? I pulled his tail playfully. Stop it! I mean it! He squealed. Now he was grinning ear to ear. Aw, where's little Mr. Poutyface gone? Hey Satan, have you seen my friend, little Mr. Poutyface? He blushed. Now, is that so hard, Satan? Smiling a little bit. Remembering that he was supposed to be sad, a somber look washed over his face and he began to speak gravely. What's there to smile about? He pouted again. The planet is ruined. There's massacres and famines and plagues, and capitalism ensures that it'll always be this way. Soon there won't be any air to breathe or water to drink, not even for the millionaire fucks who got us into this mess. And humans have lost faith in their ability to solve their own problems at the exact moment when they possess the material means to do so more than ever before. And the only people who believe in God anymore are more fucking evil and insane than I am. And this makes you sad? I replied incredulously. This is why you've given up hope? Satan paused, a glimmer of recognition coming into his eye, which he quickly buried away. It's just that nobody needs the devil anymore. The world is fucked up enough without me. And how did it get that way? I queried, feigning innocence. Who made it that way? You know, the market and the state and the rich and the cops and ignorance and racism, Satan answered with dubious modesty. And who made those things, Mr. Poutyface? Who made the earth a despicable place to live, where the luckiest ones are able to sell their short lives off in exchange for the material their bodies require to live? Where the fulfillment of basic human needs has led to the destruction of the very ecosystem on which the species depends for survival. Where hatred and fear and the threat of violence prevent people from changing their situation for the better. Who made the world that way? Was it me? Did I do it? Fuck no you didn't! Satan boomed indignantly, his verve restored. It was me! I made all those things possible! I made this planet a shitty place to live, a miserable excuse for human life, and don't you fucking forget it! I smiled. He blushed. Let me tell you a little story, Satan, I began. Yesterday I was out for a walk, and I got caught in the rain. He smirked. That's not the story, you little devil! I pulled his tail and he chortled. I tickled his tummy. You little imp! I continued. I was out walking, and out of nowhere, a thunderstorm hit and drenched me head to toe. Lightning was flashing. Thunder boomed overhead. A tree branch nearby me was struck and fell to the earth. I was afraid for my life. I've never been so scared before. But as quickly as the storm came, it lifted. Before I knew it, the clouds had cleared, the birds emerged from their hiding and began to sing, and before my very eyes a majestic rainbow stretched from one corner of infinity to another, promising that no matter how bad things get, there's always tomorrow. There's always the hope that things will be better, that our suffering will be alleviated, that everything will be okay in the end. What's your point? Satan demanded incredulously. My point is, your work isn't done yet. Look around at all these people. Some of them are happy. Some parts of the world are still an okay place to live. We can still breathe. We can still occasionally find food that won't give us cancer. Vast coastal cities aren't underwater yet. We haven't killed off the whole race in a nuclear war. Oh, give it 100 years, Satan waved me off dismissively. Our civilization is on a course of self-destruction and there's no turning back. I'm all washed up. There's no need for me anymore. Satan looked down into his drink like he was about to cry. That's where you're wrong, Satan, I implored. There's always hope, and that's precisely why we need you. He looked up, a gleam in his eye. What if people figure out that they don't need to destroy the planet in order to satisfy their basic needs? I asked. What if poor people all over the world realize they have more in common with each other than with the maggots who control all the wealth and all the state power and are driving this species to the point of extinction? What if people realize that there's nothing honorable about working their lives away to make someone else rich? What if people realize that you don't need to believe in God in order to be a good person and to be empathetic and compassionate towards others? Satan was really fired up at this point. Fuck that! No way! It'll never happen! I won't let it! The species is fucked, and I'm banging the last nail into its coffin! That's more like it, Satan. And are you gonna do it here? Drinking at a bar and yelling at a TV screen? Fuck no! He boomed, fire burning in his eyes. He put down his drink and stepped away from the bar. I'm quitting drinking! I'm gonna get my life back on track! And I'm gonna fuck up this planet like a goddamn car wreck! He reached into Walter Benjamin's chest, ripped out his beating heart and ate it whole. He grabbed me by the waist and French kissed me violently. I knew you still had it, Satan, I gasped breathlessly, blood running down my chin. Let's lay waste to this miserable place. Together! I slipped my hand into his. He grasped it firmly. Let's, he replied.